Episode number 866, The Influence of the Minority.
You're listening to the official BNI podcast with BNI founder and Chief Visionary Officer, Dr. Ivan Misner. Stay tuned for networking and referral marketing tips from the man who's been called the father of modern networking, along with suggestions and insights into getting the most from your membership in the world's largest networking organization, BNI.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the official BNI podcast. I'm Priscilla Rice, and I'm coming to you from Live Oak Recording Studio in Berkeley, California, and I'm joined on the phone today by the founder and the Chief Visionary Officer of BNI, Dr. Ivan Misner. Hello, Ivan. How are you, and where are you?
I am home in Austin, Texas this week, and it's hot as heck here in Austin.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
And who do you have with us today?
Well, I have someone who's been on two other times. This is his third appearance here on BNI Podcast, Tim Roberts. And Tim, I'm introducing this time as a guest expert for my podcasts. I'm going to, over the next year or so, bring in a couple of other guest experts who are going to run the podcast with you.
Okay.
Priscilla, I'm going to really date myself and do Johnny Carson here. Johnny Carson would bring in some guest hosts who would run his show, and Tim's going to be one of those people over the next year or so, and I'll have some guest experts working with you over some of my podcasts over the next year.
Well, I welcome that. I think it'll be great.
Yeah, it'll be good. So Tim, I've introduced him a few times in the past. He is the past U.S. National Director. He's an Executive Director for BNI New Hampshire and Florida Central, Florida Northeast. He has well over 100 active chapters with more than 2,600 members, and his regions have passed over 1.5 billion in thank you for closed business over the last 10 years. And he also has his own podcast, the BNI Power of One podcast, which is one of the reasons that I thought Tim would make a great guest expert over time with BNI Podcast. Tim, welcome back to BNI Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Honored to be here.
It's great to have you here, and it's great to have you kind of take the baton on some of these podcasts with me. I appreciate it. Your topic today is the influence of the minority, which I think is an interesting topic. And I certainly have a few things that I want to add color commentary to. But how do you think the minority in a group can negatively influence a chapter and the members, which is, I think, the main theme of your point?
Yeah, 100%. So we actually were talking about the story, and I'll share the story of where this was kind of an aha moment for me, one of those BFOs, I think you like to call it.
A BFO, we should tell everybody, a BFO is a blinding flash of the obvious.
Exactly. So I've been working with chapters for many, many years, been in BNI now for over 20 years. And, we have chapters from time to time that will, from our point of view, be struggling or be stagnant and always seem to fight change and fight growth or fight those different things. And I was actually meeting with one of these chapters one time. I went to visit them and talk about the importance of growth and expanding their opportunities. Chapter's about 16, 17 members at the time. And while I'm doing the presentation, I started getting pushback from a couple of people saying, Tim, we know you want us to be bigger, you want us to grow, but we're doing really well. Yeah, we're smaller, but we do really, really well. We average a referral a week to each other. And so I stopped and I said, you average a referral a week? And they said, yeah. I said, just by a show of hands, raise your hand if you could, if you get a referral every week. And only 3 hands went up.
Mm-hmm.
And it was obviously the 3 people that were really, really pushing back. And it kind of hit me that in a group setting, especially in longer chapters, maybe chapters have been around for a long time or have members who've been involved for a long time, that those members might be highly effective. They might be getting a lot of results from BNI. And newer members will look to them for leadership and kind of guidance on what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing, what the group should be doing. And there are many times where that minority can really have a negative impact because they may be comfortable. They may be getting the results they want, and they will be the ones who fight things like expansion or growth or more activity, and thus negatively influencing others who may not be and definitely are not getting the same type of results but we'll listen to them as, well, these people have been around for long. They're the longest standing BNI members. They must know what's what and what works and what doesn't. And can have could be very much in opposition of their own best interest.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great question to ask. And I think if you're listening to this podcast, that'd be a great question to ask with your chapter. How many of you are getting a referral a week? If they're averaging a referral a week, how many of you are getting that? And to see the number is very telling. Look, the truth is, the only reason I want chapters to grow is that they generate more referrals. That's the bottom line. I could retire from BNI. I don't need this anymore. Why do I continue to do this? I continue to do this because I want BNI members to be unbelievably successful. But the only way to do that is to have a chapter large enough to be generating way more than a referral a week per member. And you can do that with larger groups. Yes?
Absolutely. I mean, again, as long as contact spheres are being well developed, right? I talk a lot about the three things that impact your results in BNI are your activity. Are you active? Your effectiveness in that activity, that would be your skill set things. And we're the only organization that trains on how to do those things.
Yeah.
And then how many people are you doing it with? That's it. And so, you need to grow. You need to strategically grow to increase the number of opportunities you have each week. And growth can look like a lot of work to people. And sometimes, again, those who might be comfortable with their results will be the loudest ones against that. And I don't think it's intentional. I don't think these people were intentionally trying to negatively impact the others. They just didn't see it until
because they were
moment.
doing fine. Nobody else was, or very few others were, but they were doing fine.
Right. And so that was it was a BFO moment for them as well. Right. Because I can then say, look, I get that you three are, but look around. Every person here is a member of this team. And if they're
Did they
not,
respond to that well?
They did at first. I think once you leave, sometimes, they come up with their own excuses at times too, but they did. They kind of highlighted, you could see them sit back a little bit and go, oh, wow. It's only us who were in a contact sphere together. So they were naturally referring to one another. But to be able to sit back and say, everybody here is a team member. So if you really care that they're here a year from now because they're having success, then we need to look at what strategies will make that happen. And the only one is growth.
So I have a close friend who does a lot of training programs with people that get together on a regular basis. And they had somebody in their training group that just was constantly negative and bringing down the whole group. And, if they were saying left, this person was saying right. If they were saying up, they were saying down. And the person ended up quitting the training group, and it completely turned around. The training group completely turned around, became very positive, very supportive. It was a whole different environment. And I've certainly seen that in BNI groups where some people are bringing down, they're anchors rather than engines. And what you want, and I talked about this in Who's in Your Room, what you want is a chapter full of engines, people that are driving the chapter forward in a positive way.
100%. And we need a little bit more empathy, I think, in some of our chapters to actually care. I think we talk about giver's gain, and it's the right philosophy. It's driven my life for the last 23 years. It's one thing to say it. It's another thing to live it and to believe it, and to actually take a step outside of your own results, especially if you are an influential leader in a chapter, and start looking at what are the other people experiencing and not be afraid of helping them and highlighting that. And it's an invisible problem for a lot of chapters, I think, because they get stuck on a number, right? We got to be 20, we got to be 30 members or what have you. I'll tell you just another real quick story on that. We were doing some training around contact spheres and the idea of balancing them out. We had a chapters back when I owned Maine who had a roundtable. The gentleman told me that they hit 32 members, so they canceled their visitor day.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah. And I was like, why'd you do that? And he said, well, we really think 30 is the right number. We really think that's the chapter we want to be at. And so we canceled the visitor day. So my first question was obviously, so you inducted number 31 and 32 by accident? I don't understand how that happened. But we broke down all their contact spheres. I said, write everybody in your chapter what contact sphere you think they should be in. And I showed them that to get the all the smallest ones to the current size of the largest contact sphere. So to balance their chapter out, they needed 29 more members.
Yeah.
And I said, so look, you're far away from growing unless you want to go to all these other members and say that being 30 is more important than their success.
Yeah. What a great way to put that.
And that one made him sit back.
We've both seen chapters of 50, 60, 70 members that are generating dozens and dozens of referrals per member per month, at least certainly many referrals per member per month. And it is quality, but it is also quantity. Both are an important factor in a successful chapter.
Yeah, there's just more, again, it's the opportunity that exists, right? You can only do so much activity. You can only get so skilled at that activity. I tell people, you want to make your membership more efficient and more cost effective. Well, if you're going to do a weekly presentation, it's better to do it in front of 50, 60, 100 people than it is 10.
Isn't that the truth?
Yep, same activity.
Well, we're almost out of time. Talk to me a little bit about the importance of leadership and focusing on the whole group.
I think that's everything. I think it's from our organization top down, is having the right leaders are looking at what's best for the team, not what's best for them in that moment. So even if you are getting tremendous results and, maybe not as motivated to put in more because you're getting what you need, it's to have that empathy and have that vision and to be able to see what's the experience everybody's having. Because the truth is, in every chapter, every member is not playing exactly the same game. They don't have exactly the same opportunity. And so to be able to see where those troubles lie and be able to have empathy for that and to be able to want to give back and effort to help make that even for everybody is what a true leader is.
I think oftentimes we get caught up in BNI with the management of a chapter, but leadership and management are different. Leadership is not about command and control. It's about mobilizing and inspiring. And that's what leaders in a chapter really need to focus on, in my opinion.
That is a far more eloquent way of saying that. Yes.
Thank you. Tim, thanks for doing this podcast, and welcome to being my first guest expert who will be running some of these podcasts in the future. Everyone look for Tim on some future podcasts this year and in the future as we go along. We're going to have a couple of guest experts, and Tim will be our very first one. Thanks, Tim, for being on. And for those of you who are listening, where can they listen to your regular podcast?
They can find it same place as yours: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts. It's BNI Power.
BNI Power of One?
Correct. Yes.
All right. Great. Tim, thanks again for being on. Back over to you, Priscilla.
Okay. That's it for this week. Thank you so much for the great information. This podcast is sponsored by MeisnerAudioprograms.com. These audio programs will provide you with the tools and the inspiration to powerfully enhance your BNI experience. So check out the great material that's available to you at MeisnerAudioprograms.com and use the promo code IVAN50 for 50% off of everything. All of the proceeds go to the BNI Foundation. So thanks so much for listening. This is Priscilla Rice, and we look forward to having you join us again next week for another exciting episode of the official BNI podcast.